If this isn't true, I don't know who I am. What is da'as? Da'as, sometimes I've seen as knowledge. What's interesting about the word da'as is we have it with man, Adam and Chava. It says that man knew Chava, his wife. It's talking about intimacy. Da'as means an intimate joining. That's what it means. An intimate joining is da'as. Happens to be that there's an intellectual intimate joining, which is when you know something so well that it becomes fused with your personality. That if this isn't true, I don't know who I am. This information is fused with my personality. So it's an intimate fusion of the knowledge with the person. The person and his knowledge become one and inseparable from one another. That is das. When Adam was commanded not to eat from the tree, the fruit of the tree of knowledge, das, of good and evil, is it the knowledge of good and evil, or is it the fusion of good and evil? And the deeper sources explain that what it means is the fusion of good and evil. That prior to the sin, there was no impurity in man. It was very obvious to him what was good and what was bad. Everything was black and white. And because he was of such clarity, it was impossible for him to sin. Adam's failure was that he thought that it wasn't fair and it wasn't a true expression of his free will to live at that state. That it's so obvious what's right and wrong that he would never sin. He said, I want to have some temptation so that I can overcome it, and that'll be a true service of God. That'll be a true service to Hashem, because right now, it's just too easy. It's just too easy. So he ate from the fruit of the tree of fusion of good and evil, so that now there was a blend. It was not so black and white anymore. He could not see clearly what was absolutely wrong and what was absolutely right. Everything that was good had a little bit something repulsive in it. That even though it was the right thing to do, he had reasons, intellectual reasons, to choose not to do it. I don't want to do it. It's a mitzvah. Doesn't appeal to me. And something which was wicked or evil had appeals to him. There were reasons, intellectual reasons he could justify, and he could intellectualize to himself why it was positive to do, what benefit he could gain from doing it. And now suddenly there was a real test. The rest is history, because we didn't pass all the subsequent tests. Adam thought, oh look, I'll make myself tempted, I'll give myself a temptation, and then I'll overcome, and that'll be a true service of God, because right now it's just too easy. Turns out that was kind of the test all along. What Adam had to struggle with prior to the sin was his own ego. Meaning, man was perfect, but obviously he wasn't that perfect because he made a mistake. What was the imperfection of man? The imperfection of man was sentience, self-awareness. We have the capability of what's called meta-thought. What is meta-thought? We can think about the process of thinking. That's a uniquely human capacity. Hashem endowed man especially with this. And that was man's greatest strength and also his greatest weakness. The Gemara says that it's a Gemara in Chagigah if I'm not mistaken, it says that there were 974 generations that were created and destroyed before Adam. What does that mean? I'll give you my typical answer. I don't know. But remember we spoke about that God created the world originally with the attribute of strict justice, strict judgment, but he saw that the world could not endure, so he blended with it the attribute of mercy, and that allows the world to endure. This is what that looked like. The first initial creation of a man, in a human being, into a world which existed on a level of absolute strictness, restrictiveness, Hashem gives him immediately a self-awareness. So you have who's the guy, the famous philosopher? I think, therefore I am. Descartes. I think, therefore I am. So in Adam's case, it was I think, therefore I am not. What do I mean? Adam comes into the world with a self-awareness, and he says, I am. That's the first thought of a sentient being. Your awareness of yourself is the thought, I am. There's just one problem. There is nothing other than Hashem. So in a world that functions under strict justice, as soon as a man steps into the realm of I am, as an I am a separate and unique consciousness, outside and distinct from the one who is all, I cease to exist because I just stepped out of reality. It's a contradiction. There is no I am other than Hashem. So in a world of strict justice, the creation of man, he's self-annihilated in the same moment. So that man comes into the world as an I am. And as soon as he am not. Because it's a negation of the oneness of Hashem. Until Midas HaRachamim comes along and allows him to be separate and distinct. But somehow there was 974 creations and self-annihilations before there was finally a man who didn't self-annihilate. And that was Adam. So Adam's failing, his greatest strength and his failing at the same time was his self-awareness. His thought of I am, which he was allowed to live with. He was allowed to continue existing with that heretical thought in mind, that I am. Can you imagine such a heresy? That was also his greatest weakness. It was his desire to express that I am, the anochiyut, the ego that caused him to sin. Because he had no evil inclination. All he said was, this service of God is not a proper expression of what I am capable of. And I'm going to show God that I can do better. It wasn't his Yetzer Hara that tripped him up, because he didn't have one. It was his ego. The ego we will have even without the Yetzer Hara. It's just too easy.